We're here for another episode of Peace of Mind. This is episode 84, Free Speech. So, to start things off, there's been quite a few things happening within the past week or so where Elon has bought Twitter. And I don't think that's necessarily the beginning point to the conversation of free speech. I think the conversation of free speech has started for quite some time with what's been going on with the pandemic and with our current financial crisis and a lot of other problems that we're dealing with. But I feel like the crucial foundation to start upon is, what is free speech? What exactly does that mean here in this country?
Absolutely. And like, the reason I was inspired about this with Elon Musk buying Twitter was because, so you have Twitter, something where it has been described of as, it's meant to feel like a living room where everyone is able to engage in conversation. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it feels really inflammatory, and sometimes it feels like the opposite of that. It feels like something's very curated and people get kicked off of it. And as much as I hate, as much as I dislike Donald Trump and I dislike a lot of other people that have been kicked off of it, kicking people off because of what they say is technically a violation of free speech. But how do you define what free speech actually is? Because free speech, if everybody has an equal voice, then everybody has the ability to use the platform with their entire voice. But if you're looking at it from less of a equality and more of an equity standpoint, where it's like raising people up who are lower and then also equalizing, rather than giving the people who already have a big mouthpiece, like or big voice, a big mouthpiece, making it more level, then then you do need to dampen down the neo-Nazis who are trying to bogart Twitter. Like, they already have a huge voice. These are very privileged privileged white boys who decided Hitler was cool, and it's awful. They're awful. It's an awful demographic.
I think also important point is the First Amendment. Okay, where I read an article and kind of to sum this up is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, which is in the First Amendment.
Yes.
It clearly standpoints a simple idea is you can practice your own faith, your own belief. However, even as it constitutes, even as it's written, there are rules that apply. So you make an excellent point is if you make a place free, and you say there is no rules, you're free. You can do what you please.
Right, exactly. And but if your freedom limits other people's ability to speak, is it still as viable? Who is that podcast?
Welcome guest.
Well, actually, pause 1 second.
I'm going to try to pause. It's kind of hard to do that. But yeah. So while Eli's away, I do want to mention that the first pointer is that the 5 freedoms is to protect, of course, speech, religion, press, and assembly. And the right to petition the government Together, these 5 guaranteed freedoms make the people of the United States of America the freest in the world. So again, the 5 freedoms it protects is speech, religion, press, and assembly. Those are the 5 things. Okay? Within those demographics, who's to say that there's no limits? There has to be boundaries.
Right. Well, there has to be boundaries. Well, and that's kind of the thing where it's like, there's kind of been the old debate of like the queer community and Christianity, right? Because you have like the queer Christianity being like, you know, gay people are sinning by existing, or queer people are sinning by existing, and and they've protested against them. And then you have like queer people saying like, and they're saying like, we have a right to our belief, but their belief is inherently something that's oppressing other people, and them speaking on their belief is inherently something that's oppressing other people. So, and then when so do you define the ability to practice your belief something? Is it limited once it gets outside of yourself, once it touches somebody else?
I feel in many ways, as people, we need to remember to respect each other for our indifferences, but not to force upon our opinions on others. And clearly stating the obvious is where if you believe in something, doesn't mean that somebody else is going to believe the same things as you. You need to do what's right for your community, not what's right for yourself.
Right. Well, but also it's like, if what, like this is kind of calling back to like, talking about people who have inclinations to do very bad things.
Yes.
If they're following their belief system and they're, killing or eating or raping people, like, are they still allowed to practice those beliefs? Those beliefs are like inherently oppressing other people and hurting other people, but that's their belief system. In the same way with freedom of speech, it's like if you're saying things that are violent or inflammatory or that are against a certain marginalized community or any community, hate speech. What defines hate speech? Because that gets so sensitive too. Because if you count it in terms of like, racism, homophobia, misogyny, all the kind of traditional ones, by limiting people saying that, like you have people who are neo-Nazis, you have the sort of Proud Boy jerks who are like, yes, this is limiting my free speech. And it is in a sense. But is it?
So to put it in a way is, if you as a person are wishing harm upon others, okay, even if that's your belief system, if you believe that you are the superior race, whenever you reach a point where it can cause affliction or harm or pain on others, that's where the line crosses, and you say, no, you can't do this. It's because you're hurting people. Right. Yeah, but they're black. Well, we don't give 2 shits that they're black. You're hurting these people that have families just like you do, have kids just like you do. They have jobs just like you do. So I guess to point of phrase, that's where the line is crossed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like when you have like, as soon as your beliefs, your speech, your actions affect other people's lives in a tangible way, that means that it's no longer just something that's yours. That's something that affects everybody around you. And I think that does need to be limited, or not, or at least like analyzed. But at the same time, then you have people who come back at that in the same way, where they're like, well, that's oppressing me. So saying my inability to oppress, if you have a person from group A saying like, group B is bad, and then group B is like, that's hate speech. Group A should not be able to say that we're bad. And then group A can come back and say, well, you're oppressing me. I'm being oppressed now by not being able to criticize group B. And that's where we have a lot of like Donald Trump supporters, for example, where people are saying like, you know, the whole like argument against like the liberal snowflakes or whatever. You know, clearly. But like, you know, like where you have a lot of these sort of more right-wing people who are like saying that like them being limited on how they are able to speak about people that they disagree with and they don't support is oppressing them.
I mean, so important thing to an important thing to keep in mind is that the First Amendment is neither left wing or right wing. Okay,
Right.
This makes very clear.
Yeah.
It can be used to push for a social or political change, or to oppose a change. The First Amendment is for everyone, and you make a great point. Is where it's not about the left, it's not about the right. It's about a clear denomination of we are all a part of this country, okay? We all work shitty jobs. We all have shitty taxes we don't want to pay. There's a lot of crap we all have to deal with. Why is it when it comes to a person speaking their minds, oh, he's a Republican. He's a Republican. No, he's a Democrat. Oh, no, don't listen to it. What does that have to do with anything? It has nothing to do.
It's not about the label. It's about what the label signifies.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the label. The label only exists because you need a category for certain behaviors and mentalities. You're not saying people are bad because they're Republicans or Democrats or whatever. Like the badness doesn't come inherently in the label. It's that label signifies this type of behavior. A person who identifies as a neo-Nazi is going to behave a certain way because they're a neo-Nazi, and they're going to have certain belief systems because they identify as a neo-Nazi. Somebody who, when you claim a label, whatever it is, whether it's like queer or like, you know, anarchist or artist or whatever, I'm just saying for myself, like you also, when you claim that label and you identify as that label, you also invite all the things that label means to not just yourself, but to society. And so if you're identifying as a Republican or a Democrat, then you're also identifying with what those things signify and mean on a social and cultural level. And so that's why people...
I'm a very strong believer of, I don't think there's such a thing as a person that's 100% Republican or 100% Democrat or, you know, liberal or conservative. I think all people are a mixture of each piece of the pie. And when it comes to general values, when it comes to societal norms, when it comes to daily lifestyles, the lives that we're all trying to live, it's not about a political war. It's not about whose side is who. It's about, again, the line that we do not cross, and about what is right for our community, not for you. Not for you. There's got to be, yeah.
Well, but that's not. No, it's like I don't think it has to do with like that label, but it's like, or like people being one thing or another. But like when you say right wing or conservative, it can be assumed, unless somebody specifies that they identify as like a libertarian or a fiscal conservative but social liberal, because the thing is that distinction is very important. It can be assumed that a person who identifies as a Republican will probably be more in the Christian demographic, will probably be white, will probably, and that's not, obviously this is not everybody, but this is most of it.
No,
this is
the general, the general variables of just the demographic of these people. Yeah.
Exactly. And so they will also be anti-gay, and they will be more restrictive on women's reproductive rights. And so like those are not assumptions by stereotyping people. Those are assumptions because being aligned with that political contingent is what makes up that label. Like
the people in the group.
Yeah, like those ways of thinking, anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, anti-interracial marriage,
Right.
things like that. Those are things that are cornerstones of conservative and Republican and right-wing ways of thinking. So it's not saying I'm against these people. It's not like, punks versus goths versus, whatever. It's like, this isn't like a social club. This is like something where literally the political group that you're part of is deciding whether or not other people have ability and agency over their bodies and their lives.
I feel like it's such a cruel joke to have a two-party system, especially in this country, because it kind of limits. I always say this: a liberal is not a Democrat. A conservative is not a Republican. Because if you say that you're conservative, and I've met many people that are conservatives and they're not Republicans in any shape or form, they're not against the gay community. They actually grew up with the gay community. And I think that's again like the whole idea of, if you look at free speech, it's in the name, it's within speech, it's the way that you're identifying yourself into these different groups. Is you're not telling people, oh, this is my stance. You're telling people, this is where I put my cards down, in a way.
You are telling people, this is where I put my cards down. That's why it's important what you identify with and what you don't identify with. And those cards, in some cases, especially when you're talking about politics, can mean life or death to other people. So, like, in the same way that, like, when we're talking about, like, Elon Musk and the rise of neo-Nazis on Twitter again, and having to corral that and having to, like, limit what they're able to post and stuff, and whether or not he's going to, like, filter that and kick people off and blah blah blah, now that he's the king of Twitter. Like, when you have that, it's like, those people, if you're talking about true free speech, with anybody being able to say anything, they should be able to have that, say that on that platform, in the same way that anyone who has a more liberal or radical perspective should be able to speak as well. But that means that you're essentially giving a platform to people who are speaking hate speech and who are inherently trying to eliminate certain groups of people from the planet.
It's a great idea of creating a town center. I love that idea, but
that's what it's
supposed to be. But when you have a rotten apple, okay, in the batch, it's going to cause problems. And, I do agree with this idea of having an open platform for social media, allowing people like me, like we're doing, being able to be more open, be more creative. But at the same time, and I know people don't like hearing this, but we do need limitations. We do need to be able to say to ourselves, okay, this is where we stop pouring the water. That's it. We cannot go any further. It's just going to overflow.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, something I think is a really interesting, this is a little bit, not deeper, but like just to get more specific about Elon Musk and Twitter. There is at least one person who's trolling Twitter and trolling Elon Musk as Elon Musk and saying things like, I drink my own.
Yes.
Do you want to read?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
yes.
It's so great. And it's like it's like such a it's I'm not like, oh yes, everyone should like bully Elon Musk or whatever, but like I think it is a really wonderful karma and like karmic retribution, and also just kind of a funny thing where it's like, yes, when you take all of the guidelines off and you take all of the rules off, that also means that you can become the victim of the bullying. It means even if you like own the platform itself,
$40 billion platform, 40 billion. $40 billion.
Yes. Even if you own the $40 billion platform, you can become a victim of the bullying on the $40 billion platform. Being the king doesn't mean you can't get made fun of.
So I'll read you what the post said. Elon Musk at Richard Summer replies, says, "This isn't funny, comma guys, sad face." So the fake account originally posted Elon Musk at Chris Warcraft. There is nothing better than waking up and enjoying a fresh, steaming cup of my own urine. Such a tangy way to start the day. And it's scientifically proven to help brain cells grow. If you want to be like me, drink your pee.
It's so funny,
I
but
love it. I love it.
It's such a good troll because
yes, it is.
At it, the photo is the same, the name is the same, and both of them have the blue star next to them. Like, it's an approved account. And unless you look at the actual handle, you might actually think it's him. And I wonder if there's going to be like a trend of that, of people just doing that, kind of trolling him because he's done this and he's put himself in such a vulnerable position now. You can't really buy clout. Everyone, like, I think that's kind of what he's trying to do.
The Twitter games have begun.
Have a conversation. I think he's trying to buy a seat at the table rather than get welcome to the table. And like, money doesn't buy popularity. Money buys influence. And like, I don't know. That's a whole other conversation.
I don't think that primarily the only reason why he bought Twitter is for money. And I say this because if you
bought it for clout. I don't think it was for money at all. He's going to lose money on it. I think he bought it for clout. I think he really, okay, look at his history in terms of like who he's dated, where he goes, the things he does, what he talks about, and his social life. He's like one of the only business people who actually actively talks about his social life and has sort of more of like a Hollywood. He's like a wannabe Hollywood bad boy.
I mean,
when Johnny and Amber Heard broke up, he dated Amber Heard. And then he married Grimes and had 2 kids with her. Like he's trying to be like the bad guy, but like the bad, like I'm the tech bro, but I'm also like a bad boy.
I can see that because like he went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he smoked weed on the Joe Rogan podcast, and that's so like
people have made memes of that for years now. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's like the greatest thing that came out of there.
But that's what I'm saying. I was like, he's really, really trying really hard to be cool. And I think that's why he bought Twitter. It's like, think of like a Richie Rich kind of character, like a child billionaire buying a theme park so that all the people come play there. It doesn't mean that they want to hang out with him. They just want to go to the theme park. And I feel kind of bad for him in a sense, because I feel like he's probably very deeply lonely. Like, he might be the most rich and powerful person on the planet in a financial way, but I also don't think he has very many close friends. And I think that this is sort of one of those, it's sort of a Kanye move.
I don't think the problem is Twitter. I don't think the problem is him buying Twitter. I think the bigger issue over here is we have reached a point in society as to where we say, where is it enough? Where do we, again, like I said earlier, where do we cross that line? Because we're going to get to a point where if we keep, this is my personal opinion, if we keep on going in the direction we're going, we're going to be fine with people murdering people who say, hey, they're helping cleaning up the streets because they're murdering people. That's the most fucked up shit I've ever heard of. But in 30 years, that might be an actual reality in this country or other parts of the world. We don't know.
That'll be new. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I think that's an aspect of it, but I also think that like the irony of a private investor or a private person having to buy something that's supposed to be a public platform to make it a free platform again is kind of a weird, like, that's a weird conundrum, like social conundrum, where it's like,
What?
hold on, where it is.
But-
I don't know. I just got a notification about Elon Musk news, but I can't open it because it's going to close everything that we're doing.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
I found it. I was just like, what? So what happens with that later? But no, I mean, I think it's just really interesting place that we are in the world, in society, where it's like, and I'm not saying, I don't necessarily think it is good to have a space where everybody can say everything, because I think that does lead to hate speech and violence and oppression of people who are already oppressed.
Right.
What I want to talk about with that, though, is also you have like, so when you think about, I talk to people a lot about like confidence, and like when you don't have a lot of confidence, it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a longer time to be able to say the thing that you're really thinking or feeling and want to express. And to do, so when you are somebody who might be from a marginalized group, or like you are aesthetically not as like, you're not as like conventionally attractive, or you're not as successful, or whatever thing makes you feel less than, like, you're going to have to overcome so many battles to be able to even find your own voice, let alone feel like you have the ability to take that voice and use it. And so there are so many hurdles for somebody from a marginalized group or like an otherized group to get to the point of even saying something on social media like Twitter, versus like the Proud Boys, who are just like these dumb rich white boys who are or whatever, different classes, but these white dudes who are just like, yeah, white power, like that's like literally, those are people whose voices have been reinforced since birth, and so they have a lot less hurdles to have that voice.
But you still
not really an equal platform, because that's the whole thing. There's a really great I'll find this image and we can reference it later, but like there's a cartoon that was made like probably a decade ago. It's about equality versus equity, and it's this image of three people watching a baseball game, and in it you have each of these three people is of a different height, and so equality is each of them getting one box that's all the same size, so each of them is elevated a foot or whatever, but it means the tall person can see, the middle height person still can't see over, and the small person is in the middle of the fence. So equity is about equalizing the playing field, not just leveling it, but like equalizing it, so lifting up those who have been oppressed for longer. So the visual metaphor for that is taking the three people of three different heights and giving them three different platforms that are the equal height, like equalize their heights. So it's a different thing. So like basically it gives the person who's the shortest the tallest box, person who's medium the medium box, and then the tallest person the shortest box, because they don't need a bigger platform to be able to see over the top. And that's the difference where when you're talking about limiting voices that are people who are already like the majority or already on top, it's not really limiting their voices in the same way that it is limiting people's voices who have had to fight to have a voice in the first place.
I think you make an excellent point. And I just wanted to add, where if you take this idea, a person that wants to share their craft with the world, they have a lot more opportunities now to get their stuff out there. I mean, we're 13 years apart. When I was growing up as a kid, a lot of what we can do now did not exist. Okay. And I'm not that old. I'm 24. When you were growing up as a kid, majority of this stuff I grew up with did not exist either.
I love where we are with social media now. I love where we are with like TikTok, the ability to make all these different videos. I feel like I've been waiting my entire life to be able to have these kinds of accessibility in these platforms. Like I wish that I was 13 years old doing this right now. I wish it's like there's so much. This is what I've always wanted to be able to do, and it's really cool because now we actually can do it, and it really is a great equalizer, because literally all you need is like a phone, iPhone or Android that can handle the apps, and that's it. You don't even need to buy it all at once. They just lease it now. And that is all you need to be able to create whatever kind of content you want. You can download all the free different things that like allow you to photos and the videos.
You said you said also with the minorities. I've seen so many indigenous tribes that have music or crafts and they share them online. It's amazing. I've seen cultures I would never think in a million years I could see.
Well, and you know what's so cool about it too, with this being this great equalizer by just having like a phone and recording your neighbors and stuff,
It's
is
amazing.
like, well, I know, but like what's so cool about it too is the perspective is not that, is you're not viewing it through like a neo-colonialist or white person lens anymore, because it used to be the only way that you saw like extremely like, you know, reclusive tribes in certain countries or whatever, is if you had some camera person from like a westernized country go there and videotape it and then bring it back to the world in a documentary. There were so many steps before being able to just like learn about new cultures. And now, literally, these people have phones. They still live in like villages where they build like, you know, like huts and houses and stuff. But then like they're making like food out of like, you know, or like they're making like, you know, like clay hair wraps and things. But it's like now they're videotaping each other. They're recording each other. See, I'm aging myself. I'm saying videotape because it's not video anymore. It's not. There's no
It's
tape.
not an actual videotape. Yeah, I know. I feel old too.
I know. I say that sometimes and I'm like, that's not even the right term anymore. But like, you have people, you know, this is like this person who happens to be like 20 years old with an iPhone recording their neighbor who's like 97. So you get this perspective from this little like, you know, like tiny little like tribal community, like, and it's not something that is going through the filter of white man's gaze or white man's camera. It's so great because it's really truly giving a voice to the people who are from that community, not looking at it through like a like
if you take it to a step further, you know, a lot of people that had peaceful protests way back in the day, now they're able to do it in a much easier way. They're able to come together about a conflict and work on it together, create a campaign online, get people involved in the community, be able to run like it's just.
Well, so you might be too young for this, but do you remember Arab Spring?
No.
Do you remember the Occupy movement?
No.
I'm old. So the Occupy movement. Do you remember? Have you ever heard of Occupy Wall Street?
Vaguely.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little backstory. So, Occupy Wall Street was the very first global, organized, almost strictly through social media protest movement, and it was in I think 2000. I want to say it was 2012 or 2011. I'll double check that. But it was either 2011 or 2012, and it was something happened with Wall Street. Is initially it's a bunch of people who are like, you know, like fighting the banks in Wall Street, and then it just metastasized and it went global. And you had, you know, Occupy Alaska. There was a huge contingent in Chicago, and I was not as big of a part of it as some of my friends were. A lot of my friends were like at the core organizing group of that. I was not, because I was at the time working on an coal industry documentary, and so I just was like, I was a little bit I was like on the fringe of it. So I'd like go to some of the organizing meetings, but I was not there doing the General Assembly every night or whatever, because they did that literally every night. There were literally people camping out. Like they had encampments in every major city, some small town, in like almost every country in the world. And it was the first time that you truly had a global movement that was organized through social media, hashtag Occupy whatever, and that was really cool. Sorry, again, I apologize, I'm sick. But before that, we had the one that was the very first one that was like broadcast through social media was Arab Spring. So that was something that was like a revolution that was happening in the Middle East, and they hashtagged Arab Spring. And that was something that brought global recognition and like viewership to what was going on in real time. It was, so a lot of the time with like protest movements and any sort of like anything that's like political organizing and stuff, you have this sort of like spectator viewership where it's like a documentarian comes down there with their camera and they're viewing it and they're watching it and recording it. And this time you have people with smartphones videotaping all of the stuff. You can find this on my page. If you go deep dive in my page, you can find videos of Occupy Wall Street from like 2012, and like that I took over that. And I was not one of the core people, but like I knew the core people that were at like the center of that stuff. And it was really interesting because like that whole thing was moved through social media, because it was the first time that you didn't have a filtered description of what was going on. And that's what's so interesting and so important about like, camera phones and social media, because it's no longer something where it has to be processed through a gatekeeper or through a system of gatekeepers or an industry. It's something that is like directly from like the horse's mouth, so to speak. The person who's experiencing it gets to tell you about their experience directly and what that experience means.
So it allows people, when you have free speech, to really get the message out, because
yes.
there's nobody holding you back. You have the camera, you have it in your hand, and you can literally go record right now.
Oh yeah, like I mean, it's still not a perfect system,
no, it's not.
Right, but it's getting better all the time, and I think it's really cool and powerful that we're able to do it at all. But we couldn't do that a long time ago. Like when I was in college, I have a degree in writing and photography, and when I was in college, I did a lot of documentary photography, and after college too, in my early 20s, of protest movements. And I worked with like Green Forest Action Network and some Greenpeace, like Forest Ethics, Friends of the Earth, and some with like Levejo and Pero and other organizations. And I would like photograph. I was actually on the short film that I was doing like makeup and styling for today. I was working with another documentarian who we had worked together like 15 years ago. And it was so fun because now we're both in LA doing like art department and like more like styling and stuff. And it's just really fun because it's like a whole different world just reuniting. But like you would have people who are designated photographers for events and things, and now everybody's doing it. It used to be this kind of thing where you had to have access to this good camera, you had to have editing software, you had to have a computer that could accommodate that, you had to have hard drives that could back everything up, you had to do, and then you had to email it to people. So there was all this like process of making your way through all these different like systems to be able to get the message out there. And then once it was out there, you didn't have a whole lot of ability to say, like ability over, or like a whole lot of control over what the message was, how it was phrased, what was said, because it was still you submitting your thing to this bigger thing. You're a part of a bigger thing. You're never just the person doing it. And now you have the ability to shoot, to speak, to upload, to do sound design, to to analyze, to every single thing. You can be literally the writer, director, actor, producer, like cinematographer, like sound person, editing, everything, every single thing comes back to you now because you have everything you could possibly need to do that in your hand. And that is an extremely powerful place in the world to be.
I think that's the message of free speech. I think that free speech has evolved over time, and I think due to the internet and its incredible speed and vast, it's gotten big. Free speech has become more of a real thing. More people are able to speak out than they've ever been able to, and I mean, this has been a really, really incredible conversation. Just kind of getting into the nitty gritty of this beautiful country. So, yes.
It's very cool to see everything evolve. And what's also really cool is just how things like something that's been really, really powerful that I've seen just in my mid-30s, is seeing on TikTok people talking about having ADHD or having autism or having all these different things that were like these taboo things to talk about, or maybe you talk about like one friend or whatever, like you didn't open up about things, and now there's entire if you can navigate the algorithms right, your entire channel and entire feed is just all information that you want about the things that you are either interested in doing, or that you need support with. And there are so many people that are using whatever tools they have in their capacity to help others through social media and through having this sort of unabridged, unfiltered internet. It's great. It's amazing. And like there's so much support and beauty to the internet and to the ability that we can create whatever content we want. But within that, you'll still get kicked off of, TikTok if you say certain words or if you have certain types of content and stuff. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having guidelines. I think that guidelines allow us to focus on the more important things. I mean, I think that, like, I don't want to say that it's wrong for, well, I mean, I don't want to put a moral thing on it. I think that to create, nurture, and facilitate as much dynamic conversation as we can and as much information sharing and true support and camaraderie as we can and community building, I think that we have to have guidelines because it allows us to figure out how to treat each other, but it also allows us to focus on the message rather than rebelling against the guidelines. Like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, if all you're doing is fighting the inflammation, then you're not focusing on the beauty that's already there.
No, you're not.
And there's so much there.
There is, being able to see what you're able to accomplish and what you're able to do. You're just fighting with something that you cannot win. You sometimes just have to work with what you have and being able to accept that sometimes it's just good enough for now. It'll get better, but you have to.
That's all for us. But for the first time ever in history, we all have the same ability to get out there in the world.
Yes, we do. So this has been Peace of Mind. Hope you all enjoyed, and we'll catch you in another episode sometime in the future. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, before I forget, we are officially on TikTok. We're posting videos every single day, so be sure to check out that. And we also have our YouTube channel back up, so if you want to check out some cool videos, do that. And of course, we have our wonderful host Eli. Be sure to check out the social links in the description box.
Well,
yes, and Eli also makes rat pillows, so be sure to check that out.
Bags and tons of other things. Underland Creations LLC, that's launching on the 17th, and we're launching on the 18th, on 11/18. But here's a wrap.
Be sure to check out with more of what Eli's up to, and stay tuned.